Hello and welcome to the podcast. As you are aware, podcast listener, I have had some pretty big, what I'd call industry titans on the podcast. And today we're going to one up that because I've got folks from Good Day Home Improvement on with me today. I've got Michael Hoy, who's the executive vice chairman, and Ed Weinfertner, who's the executive chairman. We were talking before this. I think that those titles mean these are guys who used to be actively involved in the business, currently a little less actively involved in the business as the business has matured. But this is definitely one of, if not the largest home improvement companies in the country. And we're going to talk about where they started from and how they got here because you look at the success story and there's a big bright light shining on it. It's like, wow, this is amazing. And there's 1,000 inflection points along the way. And I want to go all the way back to the beginning and find out where this started and what happened. So, welcome to the podcast, y'all.
Thank you. We are going to correct you because you said good day. It is great day
Oh, it's
improvements.
great day. Well,
That's
I'll tell you
okay.
what, I'm level 10. If you want, you can downgrade me to level 8 in retribution.
No,
No
we
problem
want
at
you
all.
to have a great day. That's okay.
Great day. Okay, so let's go to the beginning of Great Day. Where do we start? Who's the original Great Day person?
Ed is the best person to start here. It's a great story.
The foundation of Great Day was with a company that was headquartered here in Cleveland called Patio Enclosures. Patio Enclosures now has been around. I think it's 58 years. Sunrooms, porch enclosures, that kind of thing. Um, uh, Started as a family business in the 60s. Um, and was a successful multi-regional company selling direct to consumer. And um, they went through some ownership transition right around the time that the Great Recession hit, and the company struggled through that period of time. And it was uh, acquired by a couple of investors who named it Great Day Improvements. Um, I was actually part of a group that tried to buy the business at that point in time. It's maybe 2010-ish, and I didn't get the deal these other guys did. And a couple of years later, um, they circled back, and the opportunity came up, and um, led the acquisition of the company in 2014. Um, and at that time, we had 12 locations, a little over 30 million in revenue, um, and fundamentally uh, really believed in the company and the product, and that stemmed from not so much their financial performance, which is a little rocky, but based on the feedback and the surveys, the ratings and such from customers. Something in the neighborhood of 75% of the people use the term, either it was, I love my sunroom, or it's my favorite room in the house. And so to me, it was like, this is a product, these are installations that really change the way people live in their homes and how they feel about their home. And so I thought there was a great opportunity with
Now,
that.
is your background in investing or is your background in home improvements?
Uh, a little bit of both. I started in the electronic components industry, so that's certainly not home improvement. Um, uh, Eventually worked in a path where what it was investing, but along the way I did have a stretch where I had the privilege of working with Pella Window and Doors' largest distributor, which is based here in Cleveland. And when I was there, Pella was piloting what they called the retail model, but the direct to consumer model. This was the early 2000s.
I found some web
But
results. I can show them if you ask again.
so I learned the um, the value of the direct to consumer model. Love the direct to consumer model. The analytics and the data driven components of it. So when the opportunity came to get involved with great day. It was sort of a natural fit, if you will.
No, I've been in this industry for just about 20 years now. 2005 is when I got heavily involved in remodeling. And in those early days, prior to the recession, 06, '07, I was reasonably heavily involved with Four Seasons sunrooms,
Oh, really?
some of their
Yeah,
bigger dealers. Um, and you know, when the recession came, I, I assume they're still around. I don't know, but man,
they
those
are.
guys got just shellacked. What happened with patio enclosures? You said by 2010, which is a couple solid years into the recession, they were doing
Yeah,
30 million when the investors came around. So I guess they survived it okay.
they did. Um, but being profitable through that stretch was a challenge, right? So it was really finding ways to build on the base that was there, grow the business, grow it profitably. Um, and the way that I would look that I would describe it, Rich, is you know the, these this business, the business model, working direct with consumers. Um, it's really it's an execution type business. It's day to day. When people tell them rip the walls apart, put in new products and so on. But um, it's heavy on the execution side. The strategy piece, you can explain it. Everybody can understand it in about 10 minutes, maybe five, right? But you're being good at it, being able to consistently you do the right thing day in and day out is that's the hard part. So it's all about people, about treating people right. It's about it has the analytics component to it. You're the marketing guy, right? The marketing funnel and you're creating opportunities and marketing spend and return on investments and all that. And it's like we've been playing baseball for 120 years, but analytics changed the way the game is played to a certain degree. At least in my view, analytics has sort of changed the home improvement business. Um, and it's that sort of money ball for home improvement is sort of the way that I would look at it. Um, but it's about getting the right people focused on the right things. And um, so one of the first things I did is I went to the network of people that I knew through Pella to say, hey, can I find a real home improvement expert, right? And that's when I reached out and was talking to Michael Hoy. Michael and I met. Uh, I was involved with the Cleveland Pella location. Michael was involved with a Casey company, which was the Pella uh, franchise out of the Maryland area. And I thought, I explained this company and the opportunity to Michael, and um, he was very polite, but turned me down. It's like, no, and at that point he had left Pella. He was working for Anderson Renewal, and um, I think I went back, was it three times, Michael, before he finally said yes over the course of
It
a
was
year?
three. It was three solid, two solid no's, a maybe, and then a yes.
So you're a
Uh,
window guy by background then, is that right, Michael?
I'm building materials in general by background. I celebrated 38 years of employment in this space last week. So
Oh,
this
wow.
is really all I have ever been involved in. But the direct to consumer side of it, uh, since late 90s, early 2000s, when Pella launched it, the network that Ed was working within in Northeast Ohio, and really it wasn't just Northeast Ohio. That company owned several distributors at the time. We
yeah,
were in Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, um, and we were all piloting different components of the direct consumer network. And Ed and I ran across each other 2002-ish,
yeah,
2003-ish.
yeah.
Wow.
Um,
Well,
And then
I was
I,
having
I
a
took on the Anderson renewal business.
I was having a conversation yesterday on a different podcast recording, and it went kind of like this. I said, I've noticed a huge shift in this industry since 2005 when I got in. When I got in 2005, if you were to go and look at the top 500 list, here's what you would see. You would see companies
Yeah.
doing 50, 60, 70, 80 million in the top 10 of the list. I think around 2012 is when I started working with Brian Elias at 1-800 Hanson's. I think he was doing at the time around 70, maybe $80 million. And I don't know for sure, but he was probably like number three or four or five or six or something like that on the list. If you go look at that list today, like $70 million. I probably should pull up the list and know for sure, but I mean that's kind of small potatoes now. That's going to be like probably 40 or 50 or something. So there's been this huge change, particularly in the last 10 years. I think a lot of it has to do with either what you would call a private equity model or an investor model, where you're seeing this is my perception. I want you guys to give me feedback on my perception to see if it's right. Private equity started coming heavily into this space, I think around maybe 2017, 18, something like that. And it made a lot of good operators realize, hey, if I was a great operator instead of a good operator, and if I embraced technology and some of this, what you call Moneyball, and really leaned into some of this stuff, and I really work on my bottom line instead of, kind of limping along at 8, 10, 12% EBITDA. I get that up to 15, 18, 20 even percent. Then we started having a lot more operators that just were running really great businesses that were then ripe for being acquired at really good valuations. And now I think number one, we've got this group of companies like Great, not good, Day, that have rolled up many, and we're going to get into that. I want to hear about that. It's very, very interesting. But we've also got this second level of just really good operators that are working their way towards either being acquired or, hey, nothing wrong with having a company that just pays me two, three, $4 million a year cash
Right.
flow like clockwork. Am I seeing that right? Because that didn't exist in 2005 that I'm aware of.
I think your assessment's spot on. I think I would emphasize that, you know, there are thousands of home improvement companies that are, you pick that size, right? A couple million to your $70 million number, that people are making a real nice living, providing a lot of value to homeowners and families that work for them. And um, it's a big market, right? The home improvement, what, 460 billion. It's a big place, and there's plenty of room for all kinds of businesses. Um, but to your point, the ability to scale, the embracing of technology, this sort of whole tech enabled marketing, the advent of digital marketing, and a lot more ways to reach homeowners, and the value of more sophisticated means to do that, or more professionalized means to do that, um, has really accelerated an opportunity where, to your point before, there was no such thing as a scaled national, even multi-regional home improvement company, at least in the direct consumer model that were different than, say, building products, right? I'm talking about direct to consumer home improvement type businesses, um, and the opportunity really has been created, and there are companies, peers of companies like ours, that have had the ability to take advantage of that, and a lot of it's been through acquisition, but a lot of it too is through driving organic growth through running a uh,
Yeah,
fairly proven marketing playbook.
one of the most phenomenal stories that I'm aware of is Brian Elias, who sold Hanson's. I think it was
Yeah,
2017. Who knows how much he sold it for? I'm sure it was a lot. Uh, and since then, he started Refloor, and 4 years later, it was $70 million again from scratch. It's like once you know the playbook, man. So you came on Michael, in around 2014, if I'm hearing the timeline
15,
correctly,
20,
2015.
2015. Yeah.
Okay, so at the time, is this still correct? It was 12 locations and 30 million approximately.
So yeah, I think it was around 35 million actually at that point, 12 locations. And at that time, I think, Ed had spent, and the team that was there had spent a lot of time just trying to understand what the model was and what was working and how were they satisfying customers. Ed and I had talked even before I joined, we were talking about canvassing or lead gen, or so I was even getting some inside scoop, if you will, as to what it was and how we were gonna, if we were gonna partner together, how we would attack it and see if we could make it go.
Well, to connect the dots, I brought this thing up about the shift that I've seen people growing companies much faster now. I brought it up for this specific point. You guys are doing 30, $35 million literally 10 years ago, 2015. Okay, now it's 2025, and if I'm not mistaken, all the companies combined are in the neighborhood of 1.5 billion. Am I right on that?
Yep.
Give or take? Okay, so I don't know what kind of I'm not good enough at math to figure that out without a calculator. That is a very fast growth.
It is, the journey though wasn't, the first really 2 years, 2.5 years was getting our processes in place, getting our playbook in place. I mean, at the time it was patio enclosures and standing windows, and the enclosure business was say 80% of what we were doing. That was where a lot of the focus was. I think one of the things we recognized was enclosures are hard. Sunrooms are really hard. It's not, take a window out, put a window in. And we kind of had the thought, if we could get that right and we could run the right playbook and we could fulfill it properly, would it give us the opportunity to do other things in the future? So really the first 2.5 years
So if you could
was
master the hard thing, then other things would
Exactly.
be relatively
exactly.
easy for you.
But we also wanted to prove
Relative
we
being the
could
key word.
grow,
Yeah.
right? So, if you go way back, and patio enclosures and Stanek was part of this, there was a mindset in some cases of home improvement companies that you can only do so much volume in any market. You can only finance so much of your business. The price is what you can't raise your price. And we took a lot of that and flipped that model upside down and said, no, you could, if you spend this is what you should get because this is what the data says. So introducing the analytics component to the business and the methodology and the mindset of we're going to use the data to guide us was really a big part of our early focus, so we could get the right people thinking the right way about how to grow the business. And if we had that team and we had the playbook that was repeatable, it made it much easier to make the decision to invest money into the marketing machine, which would create the leads, and we'd put the rep in the house and we'd run the playbook.
So
And so
who of the two of
2000,
you is the data person, or did you have to hire that in as a third party skill set?
oh, yeah, go ahead, Ed.
Well, what I was going to say, Rich, is, you know, everybody has to understand the elementary components of the data because that's how we keep score. Um, but in the early days, my son Drew joined the company, and there was a financial analyst role. I think it's what we described it, and he was really sort of the first one that was really working the analytics model and the financials model and all that. And he became sort of the coach to each of the different branch GMs
Yeah,
and that.
that
So,
tracks. And the reason I asked that question is no offense to you guys. You don't usually see, kind of the old school guys that are running home improvement companies. Like you recognize the need for this. I'm going to use your word again, Ed, Moneyball data
yeah,
analytics. But usually, guys, my generation and your generation were approximately the same. Aren't the people, at least 10, 15 years ago, aren't the guys that were really running with that ball. So that's really cool that you were able to identify somebody and that happened to be your son, even better, right?
I think
yeah,
what was so interesting about it is, we knew the business and the model of the business and the flow. We call it the water flow, right? So you spend the marketing, and then You get leads, you run those leads, certain number cancel, and you just go all the way down to you've actually installed it and you've created revenue. What Drew helped us do was take a different approach at looking at it and even going deeper than we were going and putting it into a format that was easier to understand. And the ranking system, actually, Ed had done a bunch of the ranking systems, the competitiveness of our teams. When we put out rankings 1 through 12, nobody wants to be 12, everybody wants to be 1. So the competitiveness and the green, yellow, red colors, it was a very visual model. And that model made us change how we plan the business, right? And that made us change how we think about how we spend marketing dollars or how we do capacity planning. And it was a very enlightening period of time from 2015 to 2018 that allowed us to really start to grow late
So
17 or 18.
But
during
Rich,
that period,
what an investor wants, right, is something that's predictable and repeatable. If I put these inputs in, I'll get these inputs out. And really, the marketing metrics, the analytics told us just that, right? So for us, because of the belief in the ability to generate outputs from the investment into marketing, the marketing investment was like the thing we would lose the least amount of sleep over, right? Right. It's like, I know if we put X amount in, we're going to get, give or take, X amount out. And, and we took, in the early years, we took a couple of years and we ran that and said, hey, if we're going to increase the spend by 25%, back in those days, you could expect a similar increase in the volume of leads, opportunities, meetings, bookings, right? It would just sort of translate all the way through.
so was this all done in the patio enclosures domain, or did you start acquiring? So here's what I want to know. How long
Yeah.
did you just run patio enclosures before you acquired, and what was the result of what you did before you acquired anybody?
Yeah. So patio enclosures, we did our first acquisition in late 2019. And I'm going from memory, but we had doubled the business. It was maybe 80 million in 2019.
Okay.
Part of, well, so think about it, Rich, right? So the business is growing, we're doing all right. But we're selling sunrooms and porch enclosures, very difficult product, as Michael pointed out. B, it's a high-end discretionary purchase, right? So the question always was, well, if there's a recession, like the Great Recession, what's going to happen to you? And so the theme was, well, this is going all right. How do we make the business be in an industry that has ups and downs? How do we make it be strategically resilient? How do we avoid the fate that happens to these companies when the down cycle comes? And the answer for us was twofold. One was to be opening more locations in southern markets. Get out. We were in Midwest and Northeast, so the winter was kind of slow, right? So move south where it's warmer. And then the second move was, hey, we need to get into products that are less discretionary. Given Michael and my background in window, that seemed to be the logical place to go. And we then, between 20 and 21, we acquired 3 window businesses. And the 2 most notable were Universal Windows Direct, it's also based here in Cleveland, and then Champion, which is based in Cincinnati. And so those acquisitions, those were transformational for us, and it was a big step and took the business to 600 million.
So I have a couple questions for you on this. First question is 2019. This is when you said this, you had grown the business to roughly $80 million. This was at kind of a fever pitch of acquisitions happening at that time. Like I had mentioned earlier, it seemed to me like maybe 2017 was when that really ramped up.
Yeah.
So by 2019, so was there a lot of interest from private equity or other investors to just buy patio enclosures, and you guys were you tempted to just sell out and say, to heck with it, we'll, go do something else?
Um, go ahead, Michael.
You know, so the very first private equity deal, I believe, was actually when Champion was acquired back in 2007, right? So that was big back then. I mean, that was a $300 or $400 million business. And then I think it was a feverish pitch between 16, 17, 18. Our first acquisition was actually in Florida. It was a company called Hartshorn Contracting. We expanded basically our patio enclosures business into the screen enclosure and pull enclosure business in Florida. It gave us an entry into a new market. And as we looked at what the opportunities were, we were looking at gutter protection, more window businesses, other enclosure businesses. We looked at a lot of stuff. But the one thing that we were really committed to, and Ed did a great job of helping lead this, was we had interest from private equity companies in coming in prior to us doing the bigger acquisitions that we did. And we really wanted to continue to keep operating control of the business, majority control of the business, because we really believed that the entrepreneurs who understand these businesses should be the ones leading them. But we also recognize that, man, to have a financial partner in a minority position would be fantastic and give us all these experts that understand that space better. They can help us with financing and help us put deals together. And initially, we didn't have that, right? And that's where we are today. I mean, we've been able to do what we've done by keeping majority control with the entrepreneurs, with the leaders of the business, and have really good minority partners that are helping us on the financial side be able to do these deals. So we really wanted to keep control, and we didn't want to be private equity. We wanted to be the entrepreneurs growing this business the way we have been. We are unique in that regard on the top list. So people say, are you guys, number one? We're like, we're number one if you're not fully private equity owned. Yes. I think we're the only one in the top 10 that's not that.
For the listeners who maybe aren't as familiar, I've been around private equity a lot in companies that I've worked with. And typically, what happens is private equity comes in, they find a company that's got a really strong EBITDA that's a little bit bigger, and they come in and they buy a majority position. They'll keep the owner on in a minority position, have them reinvest part of their earnings into the company, and they'll make that company what they call the platform company. Okay. And then they'll start acquiring companies that the platform company will sort of be the de facto manager and administrator of. But at the end of that conversation, the private equity folks are always the majority investors. And this is my experience, and I think it's pretty common. Those private equity folks come in and they kind of let the platform company do their thing for a little while, and then they start getting into what I think you could best call financial engineering. And private equity hates to have own a company for more than 5 years. That's usually the longest amount of time they want to own. One of the companies I was involved with did their first sale, and then the second sale was 18 months later for 5x. I mean, it was right at the fever of all of this going on.
Yeah.
And the good thing is that owners can make a ton of money. Like they make the proverbial second bite of the apple, and it's a real thing. The downside is when the financial engineering gets going, the soul of the company usually gets lost, and it leads to morale issues within the company. It leads to decisions, in my opinion, that are best for the short-term investor, not best for the long-term brand, and it becomes a problem. So what I'm hearing you say is you guys took a completely different approach. You're like, yeah, we need money to go do what we're going to do, so we'll take on these investors, but we're not going to relinquish the control to these folks. Am I getting that right?
Exactly. And I think that um, um, Rich, there's lots of really good PE firms out there. Some that do it right. There's some not so much. And our view simply was, the people that need to be running the business to protect the soul of the company, right? Because we're foundationally we're talking about it. this is all about people, right? And taking care of people and getting people focused on taking care of customers, right? Everybody's got to win. People have to be treated right. They have to, all those things, right? As entrepreneurs, Michael has been in the business 38 years. He knows this, you know, these fundamental things, right? And the trick for us was to find a partner that would, you know, help to back what we envisioned that could be done, but would allow us the ability to be entrepreneurial, right, and make decisions that they don't fully understand, but doesn't make sense to them, but it makes sense to us, and we get to do it because the way we're structured. And we talked to a lot of people, and we landed with this group called Little John, based in Connecticut. They're great people that, you know, it was a creative deal for them because it was out of the norm that you described. But they had a structured finance creative group that listened to what we were looking for, and they delivered. So it's we feel very, very fortunate.
Are there any other companies in this remodeling space that are structured like this, or are most of them that are involved with private equity more of the traditional model that I just described, where the minority owners are the actual remodeling folks?
You know, I'm pretty sure that we're the only one that has this structure. There are others though that are beginning. I think it's Omnia Roofing. I think they may have something similar, but not exactly. But
Yeah, I'm not
you
saying I
know,
know everybody out there, but the ones I've heard of, they're the traditional model. And the only reason I'm bringing this up and I'm like spending a little time on this is to me this is the secret sauce magic potion that's going to allow you guys to continue to dominate and just do awesome, because you don't have some well-intentioned financial engineer in an office on the 38th floor in a building in New York City trying to tell you how to run your sales freaking teams.
You know, the comments that we'll get through the um, acquisition process as we're getting to know potential targets and we're trying to feel each other out, right? Is we speak the same language, right? Right? You know, we'll talk about close rates and financing rates and you know, the different marketing metrics because we live in it, right? Yeah, we aren't the net detail guys, but we speak the language, and people, it's a connection point, right? And it's a differentiator in terms of if you know if you're a founder looking to decide who you're going to partner with the business that you've spent your life building, right?
Yeah, that's
Who
amazing.
you going to trust? And again, I think there's tons of great PE firms and all that, and they serve a really valuable role. But this is sort of the approach that we've taken, and um,
Yeah, you know, one of the early PE firms you mentioned, Michael, I think it was Champion, like 2007. I think it was around 2010. I got hired by a company that had recently been acquired by a PE firm. And in those days, it was mostly big deals, right? It was PE wasn't coming in and buying a $10 million roofing company. They were going to buy, you know, Champion or some, and the company that I worked with was Rebath. And I'm going to tell you, man, that was an absolute ever living nightmare for everybody that was involved, because they bought a franchise and they came in and said, "Hey, we're going to tell the franchisees what they can and can't do." And the franchisees were like, "No, no, no, that's not how this works." And I got there and they're like, "Hey, teach us marketing." And the conflict was palpable and it was awful. Hopefully they've worked that out by now. It's been 15 years. I'm sure things are awesome there. If you're listening and you have any association with that, I'm not trying to throw shade on you. I'm just telling you it was a bad deal in 2010, but that was one of my first experiences. So back to the present conversation here, you guys started bringing companies in 2019, 2021, Universal Champion, Hartshorn. I heard you say that. What are some of the challenges that you've seen as you've started bringing companies into the fold? What's the total number of portfolio companies in the portfolio now?
there's 12 total brands. Really, 10 of them are more of the direct to consumer model.
Okay, so 12
One of the things I
brands.
want to emphasize, Rich, is while we've done a lot of acquisitions and they've been significant size, half of Great Day's growth has been organic and through opening greenfield locations and growing in markets we were already in. So there has been equal investment in M&A as well as growing the business organically.
So you guys still own Patio Enclosures, I'm pretty sure, right? It's one of your
Yeah.
brands.
Yep.
So by way of just sort of putting a finger on the pulse of that, 2014, Ed, you came in, 30 million in revenue, 12 locations, grew to 80 million by about 2019 or 2020. What's that business looking like now in terms of number of locations and revenue?
A little north of 250.
250. How many locations approximately?
100.
Yeah, so here's what I just heard you guys say. We're just sitting around on our thumbs hoping that we can acquire people. I'm joking. I mean, that's really, really impressive because, again, from 2019 to 2025, let's call it roughly 5 years, maybe a little bit more or less, depending on how you measure that. Um, that's a 3x growth. That's phenomenal in that short of a period of time. What do you do? What's going on there? Is this just the analytics? Is this playing Moneyball? Is this getting Drew involved and saying, "Hey, really go in and analyze this data"? Is it just pouring money into marketing? What is it?
It's all of that.
Yes.
Yes. I will. The one thing that, and I'm not throwing shade on anybody out there either, but if, for example, if the marketing team came in and said we want to spend $1 million on marketing for the patio enclosures brand, and this is where the marketing is going to go, and here's what the return is going to be, and can we do this? Within about 20 minutes, we'd probably approve it and move on. If another person came in 20 minutes later and said, look, I need to get a new building, it's 15,000 square feet, it's going to require $4 million in CapEx to build out, we would argue with them for a month that that's not what they need. They can do it out of the back of a truck. So the point is we don't build Taj Mahal buildings to ourselves. We're not overly fancy. Four walls is enough. We believe that these businesses require investment into marketing and sales and not a bunch of fancy offices and fancy trucks and all that other stuff. So what part of the secret sauce has been is we've had the capital to be able to invest into this growth because we haven't spent it on a bunch of fixed expenses that we don't need. And I do think that's part of the mindset. And then you bring data and analytics and the marketing focus and the sales training and the recruiting and our reputation and the people we've developed and apply that. And it gives us that ability to grow as quickly as we can because we've allowed ourselves to have the resources to grow that fast. I
So
mean,
you're
every
you're
dollar
focused
of profit
on
goes back into the business.
you're focused on shoveling coal into the furnace, not building a nicer train.
Correct.
There you go.
So, okay, so at 250 million, let's be honest, that's massive, okay? Everything else aside, like we could just take this one business and you guys could and should, and I'm sure are very proud of that one thing. But at $250 million, so here's an advantage that you have over your competitors that's probably pretty obvious. It's called we have the ability to try things marketing wise that if they fail, it's not going to impact the business in any real way. But if it works, it could be a huge upside and advantage. And, we could, massively, exponentially grow that. Do you find that to be one of your competitive advantages? Like, hey, we're going to just throw money at stuff, not stupidly, not haphazardly. Obviously, you put thought and strategy into it. But like you said, hey, here's $1 million. We need it 20 minutes later. We're going to pull the trigger on that. If it doesn't go as well as planned, okay, well, we learned and now let's move on.
Rich, whether it's a competitive advantage or not, it's something that we actually do. So when you have these multiple brands and multiple regions, multiple products, we're testing. I don't know, the number of marketing tests that are probably going on at any one point is mind-boggling around our organization because we are trying to find different unique ways to gain a lead at a rate that's affordable that we can convert at a high rate and get into the home and present what it is and ask for the business. So yeah, we think it's a competitive advantage. We try lots and lots of stuff.
Well, I work with if
Rich,
go
sorry
ahead.
to interrupt. The only point that I would layer on top of what Michael said is, but we don't do it based upon a knee jerk, right? Intuition. It's based in data, right? So if you're the marketing manager presenting to us what it is you want to do, you know how we think. You say, here's the data, here's this, here's these indicators. We think this is a good bet for these reasons because this is what the trending or whatever tells us, right? So those decisions are relatively straightforward from our perspective.
Well, here, I'll put a little more texture on this. If a really small company comes to me, my company, one of the major things we do is we build websites and we do search engine optimization, among other things, but those are some of the main ones. If a $2 million company comes to me, roofing company, window company, whatever, we're having real conversations with them that go kind of like this. Well, you've got enough money to either do SEO or pay per click. You don't really have the money to do both. Okay, now they're $5 or $6 or $7 million. So then we have this conversation. Okay, we can do pay per click and SEO, but we've got to really look at how much we can invest into SEO because from my company standpoint, we've got different levels of packages that run from $4,000 to $10,000 a month, and they're going to look at that and go, "Whoa, hit the brakes. We can't do $10,000 a month. We got too many other things to spend on." Again, not suggesting that you guys would just haphazardly throw money, and that I think we're all on the same page there. But if you've got 100 locations and somebody comes to you and says, "Look, if you invest $4,000 a month into SEO, or it could be anything, or 6,000 or 8,000, you guys can look at that and go, okay, great. Let's do out of 100. Let's try that on 3 locations. We'll give it a year. We'll see what happens. We'll prove it out. It looks like it's going to work. If it works, great. Now we can go put that on the other 97 locations. If it doesn't work, we can say, okay, great. We just lost some money, but now we know. And to me, this is really the story of the big getting bigger because you've got more resources to try things without necessarily the fail of devastating failure. It's
I
minor
totally
failure.
agree. And that's a
Hold
big
on.
part of what we're trying to do. But I'm going to go back to one of the fundamentals of our belief system is, you know, so much of this business, the cost is variable, right? You don't have any selling expense unless you sell something. Yeah, there's an investment in marketing, but it's very easy to measure.
Yep.
If you're a $2 million company and you've bought a brand new F-350 dually and you like the way that looks and you've tricked it out and you spent $200,000 in your vehicle, I would probably look at that and go, spend 50,000 on the vehicle so you have 150 to put into the marketing machine. So, we are different in that regard. There are not many that think that way. I'm just being honest. In all the years I've been around, we've seen people build corporate offices that are Taj Mahals to themselves. It's like, well, what are you doing?
I've been in a few of those offices.
Yes, and look, I get it, but that's just not how we think. So we believe that the money should be invested into the business to continue to grow it so we can provide opportunity and everybody wins. And this idea of us, you look at where we are today, the to be the most referable home improvement company in the country that has multiple products under multiple brands, that we can test all this cool stuff. But if we do it really well every time, we then earn the right to ask a customer, did you consider using Leaf Guard for your gutters? Or did you even know we own this other business or this other brand because you mentioned you were considering that?
Yeah.
To be able to layer on top of the platform that's been built all of these other opportunities, that's the opportunity. That's where the magic is happening. And that's what we're trying to create. That's not been done. So that's really, it's a challenge and it's exciting to try to accomplish it.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some conversations in the brief time that I've known you about you guys are really leaning heavy into, shall we call it cross-selling, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
brand to brand and creating more of an umbrella brand. A great day. I can't believe I said good day. Great day. So tell me what the future of that looks like from right now. I know that it's subject to change because you're kind of on the front end of this, but 5 years from now, is there going to be this thing out there called Great Day Home Improvements that everybody's heard of, or maybe not?
The answer is that would be great, but to build a brand on a national scale, it just takes time, right? And we have some really well established, you know, regional brands, uh, semi-national. Champion's well known, Leaf Guard is well known, Pad Enclosures is well known, Universal Windows. So it'll be some blend of all the above. Um, but the driver for us will be to what Michael's describing is, really just being highly referable, trying to connect homeowners that we had a successful project with to the other brands of products offering that we have, and work to scale the business. Um, and at this point, our footprint is largely national. And you being a marketing guy can appreciate, some of the things that you can do from a national perspective that you can't do locally and so on. And so we really think that leveraging and you're doing things on a combination of sort of local micro view as well as sort of the national view. Essentially, we straddle the best of both worlds.
So if I looked at Great Day Home Improvements and the affiliated brands 5 years from now compared to right now, where do you think most of the growth would come from, organic or acquisition, over the next 5 years?
It'll be 50-50.
50-50. Okay. So
Yeah.
you've got very strong strategy in both of those camps.
Yeah. The Michael mentioned, this theme of greenfielding, opening new locations and so on. So the company today, roughly 120 markets, 300 brand locations, right? And so as we look at it, each market can support a Pad Enclosures business, a Leaf Guard business, a Champion home exteriors business. So you start running through the math. There's a lot more locations to be opened, and so we're going to do more in the markets that we're in. Um,
So tell me about greenfielding for a minute, because some of the private equity type companies I've worked with in the past, very, very hesitant to greenfield, very hesitant. They don't want to make the investment. They would rather just go, pay X multiple of EBITDA and just buy companies. Tell me about your decision to go in greenfield. Do you have a formula for it now? Is it
we
something
have
you've
a
done
we
so
have a
many times,
playbook.
you're good
Yeah,
at it?
Michael, you want to.
Well, we have a playbook. It's called blitz scaling, so it's a very official scientific term. Um, we're kidding, but we do have a playbook, and we've done a lot of this. If you want to say on the back of the patio enclosures brand, I mean that's where we've done most of our greenfielding. And think about when you go into a market, and let's say you've got a patio enclosures business there now, because we've been able to bring these businesses together under the Great Day umbrella. There's a lot of trust. There's a lot of relationships that have been built. We sometimes have 4 and 5 brands in one building in a market, sharing space, and others sharing expense. They're sharing resources. There's so much opportunity. We're testing and learning where is the opportunity to do things like that. But when you have each one of the brands has a little different value proposition to the consumer. And we've learned that through some studies that we've done. So why can't there be a Champion, a Patio, a Universal, an Apex, a Your Home Improvement, a Leaf Guard? Why can't they all be in one market? And that's part of the strategy, is to be able to have all of those brands where it makes sense and what the data tells us to do in all the markets that we're already in.
How many markets
And
do you
there's still
have?
white space to fill.
How many markets do you have at least 5 brands in? Roughly. Is it more like
30
five or more like
maybe,
50?
maybe 30.
Okay, so I mean, that's a pretty significant national footprint right there. If you've got five brands in, say, something like 30 markets, that's not nothing.
But it also says it's only 20% of the markets that we're already in. So there's still a lot of chance for growth.
Yeah, my gosh.
There certainly is white space to grow um, and Rich, we really see that there's opportunities just to do some, more of the same, right? So today's 300 locations, half were acquired, half were greenfielded. We think we can keep that going. It's an exciting time. The bigger challenges are, you know, everything all coming together. I would say we have what I believe is the best technology, the best tech stack in the industry. That's the good news. The bad news is we've got a couple of different variations of it, right? The company is not on one platform. We've got a variety of different platforms. Um, an example I would give you, for call centers, right? There's really three sort of primary software companies that run software, the call centers are run on. We have all three.
Okay.
Right? There's a ton of work we need to do to really streamline the tech and pick the best of the best, so to speak. So there's a ton of work on that front. And I think the way that we frame it at least is, there are inefficiencies growing as fast as we've grown. That only means there's greater opportunity to be in the future as we get to that and address it sort of step by step.
Well,
But chaotic, right? That kind of growth makes you, but it also attracts a certain kind of individual, right? And so this is a people business, and if you're a person that loves an environment where things are fast paced and it's changing and it's growing and there's lots of challenges to be sorted out, but the opportunity is enormous. Those kind of people thrive in our environment. Certain kind of person that makes them crazy and they don't like it, but if we're finding the right match, it's people that come in and are really wanting to go get it and build something that's not been built before. And
I
I
want to be
think
sensitive.
that's the
I want to be,
secret sauce, really. It's people.
yeah, I want to be sensitive to your time. We've been going just about an hour here. I really would like in the future to do a part two of this, and I'd like to dig into some of the kind of day-to-day stuff that you guys are doing. I think we've covered this kind of the origin story of how this came together. I think there's a lot more that we could get into if we had more time. So I'm going to commit you right now. Can we reschedule this in a month or two and do a part two?
We'd love to.
I do have one last question for you, though. And this is an out of left field question. Here it is. What is the deal with Ohio? Why are all of these companies coming from Ohio? I mean, it's incredible the amount of home improvement excellence that comes out of the state of Ohio. What's going on there?
Um, I think it's uh, you sort of go back in the roots. There's got to be some common originators and spin off some of that. It's like Akron, Ohio is like the rubber capital of the world, right? I mean, certain industries just have been. I don't know. I don't know. It's
Has anybody ever
I'm a
asked you that
lifelong
before?
Cleveland guy,
Because
so
it
I've
is so
always
weird.
been
Like there's so many great companies out of Ohio. It's uncanny.
yeah.
Michael, you have any thoughts on that? Is it just
Well, I'm a
luck?
Maryland guy,
Oh,
so
he doesn't know.
yeah,
He got here as soon as he could.
well, look, think about where some of the titans of industry came from was really what people refer to as that Rust Belt in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Detroit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the entrepreneurial spirit of America lives in Northeast Ohio, if I'm being honest with you. Some of the most entrepreneurial people I've ever met are there. And I wonder if that's just not part of the fabric of the great state of Ohio.
Well, we'll just chalk it up to an entrepreneurial spirit, I guess. Hey, fantastic guys! I really appreciate you spending some time today. Fascinating background. Like I said, I do want to get into some more detail with you on a part two, but for now, I just want to say thanks again for spending a little bit of time. I know you guys are incredibly busy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich, thanks for your time and your interest. It was
All right,
fun.
we'll talk to you soon.